I'd like to call this meeting of the Carson City Historic Resources Commission for Thursday, July 12th at 5:30 p.m. Community Center Share Room to order. Can I get a roll call, Tamara?
Chairperson Drews.
Here.
Vice Chair Darney.
Here.
Commissioner Block.
Here.
Commissioner Hayes.
Here.
Commissioner Schmitter.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Spilda. Here. A quorum's present.
Great, thank you. Next item is B, public comments. Members of the public who wish to address the commission may approach the podium at this time to speak on matters relevant to or within the authority of the Historic Resources Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this public portion of the agenda. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to C, approval of minutes from May 10th, 2018. We have minutes.
So moved.
So moved. Any questions? Or a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain, I wasn't here, so I'm not gonna.
I'm done.
Motion is approved.
You can approve of what
I'm
we did,
abstaining.
though, 'cause you can approve of us being here ourselves that day.
I want to point out that alphabetically.
Item D, modification of the agenda. Agenda management notice, items on the agenda may be taken out of order. Public body may combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and the public body may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion regarding an item relating to an item on the agenda at any time. Hope, is there any?
No changes.
No changes, commission members? We'll move to E, public hearing matters. E1 for possible action, HRC-18-076, to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding a request for historic tax deferment on properties owned residential office, RO, located at 408 West Robinson Street, APN 003-236-01. Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. The subject property had been subject to the tax deferment, and due to a change of ownership is back before you for consideration. The property is known as the Bliss Bungalow, and it's listed in the Carson City Historic Survey. A site visit conducted on July 2nd showed the property to be in good condition. Any alterations have been reviewed by the HRC and are consistent with the standards and guidelines of the district. The property is in compliance with the Historic Resource Commission guidelines, and the staff is recommending that the Historic Resource Commission recommend approval of this tax deferment to the board.
Thank you, Hope. Is there any commission member questions, comments, discussion?
I just had one question. Is it still being used as a bed and breakfast, or is it just residential?
I don't know the answer to that. There is a sign still in front. I was there today, and the sign is still there.
Any other questions, comments? Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of HRC 18-076, a request for historic tax deferment on properties owned residential office located at 408 West Robinson Street, APN 003-236-01. The subject approval is based on the findings that the property is in general conformance with the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines for rehabilitation, Carson City Historic District guidelines, and with the Historic Resources Commission policies.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Hope. Next item is E2 for possible action. HRC-18-089 to consider a request for the installation of solar panels on the roof of the home located at property zoned Single Family 6000 SF6 located at 319 Mountain Street, APN 003-192-24. Hope.
Thank you, Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. I do have a picture up, and I understand there's new landscaping there that the picture's not capturing, so hopefully that's not throwing you off. I understand it looks Fantastic. Okay, so the subject property at 319 Mountain Street was constructed in 2001. Although the home is constructed to be compatible with the district, it's not a contributing property in the district. Development Standards 5.14.2 address the guidelines for roofing associated with new construction in the district. The guidelines state mechanical systems and other devices which are roof-mounted are to be designed in such a way that they are not visible from the street and are harmoniously incorporated into the overall building design. The two-story residence sits on a corner lot with frontage on both Telegraph Street and Mountain Street. The front of the house is on Mountain Street. The first floor porch is located at the northwest corner of the house. The proposed solar panels, no proposed solar panels are suggested for the first floor roof. They're on the second floor roof, and they're on the sides of the building as well as in the rear of the building. Given the placement of these solar panels and that they're not on the primary facade and they're not on the most visible roof line, which would be that lower roof line, staff is recommending approval. Property owner Jeremiah Trapp, with his contingency, is present, and he's happy to answer any questions that the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope. Is there any commission member questions of Hope or of Jeremiah?
Just a clarification on the stipulation that the panels don't face the street. Are they talking about the main facade street, or on this case, we have a corner? And we have panels facing a street.
What
Just wondering if there's further stipulation to
What the
clarify that.
guidelines state is that the mechanical systems and other devices which are roof-mounted are to be designed in such a way that they are not visible from the street and are harmoniously incorporated into the overall building design. So given I'll go to the elevation. Given how high that second floor roof line is, I think in terms of the pedestrian vantage point and even a driver vantage point, it's not as if it's not the level of visibility, if you will, that first floor roof line or even a different type of roof might have. And so in looking at it in the field and looking at how high that roof is and the pitch of that roof, I felt that it was consistent with the guidelines.
Just for the record, too, I think Greg and you might remember, so 2 years ago, we met with Mr. Hersey across the street, and he was going to put solar panel, his garage that he's building had a different orientation. He was proposing solar panels on Mountain. We thought that was a more sensitive direction, and we asked him to turn everything to face Telegraph there. So this is consistent with what we've done in the past for that end of Telegraph Street anyway, and it's compatible with new construction.
And just as a clarification, there's no panels on the garage, which is the lower roof line. Is that true?
Correct. I've put up the elevation for you, and the front of the house
Right.
is essentially on the left side, if you will, of the slide, and the garage is on the far right, and there are no panels on that lower roof line.
Any other questions?
Okay,
comments?
I have a question. Well, on the site plan, actually, was where I started this thought. First of all, this means, I'm seeing where the panels are drawn in. It looks as if it addresses our concern, actually where we made a mistake previously, where we went above the apex of the roof. The way they're drawn, they're well below the apex of the roof. So I just want to confirm that's true. Number two, I'm I suppose curious, that ones that are on the Telegraph side that roof is slightly pitched. It's on the north side of the building, and it's slightly pitched away from the ideal for capturing the sun's energy. So I don't know, I guess I'll leave it to the scientists, but you're extracting enough benefit from that to make it worthwhile putting them on that north side that's sloping basically away from the ideal slope. Because I agree, it's better to have them on Telegraph than Mountain. I think we're clear on that. So, but I just sort of curious in my head, like, is that really gaining enough benefit to be worth putting it on the street side of the building?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I did speak with the applicant before the meeting and explained to him how how happy I was when this came in to see that we didn't have the panels on the front elevation or on the lower roof lines. And the applicant's comment to me was that was all Tesla, it wasn't us. So this was an original design that the applicant came in with. It was not a negotiated design.
And we should probably be careful about talking the science of solar technology because the placement in terms of aesthetics is under our purview, but questioning cost benefit for solar may not be. So let's
I
just
agree.
remember that in discussion.
I agree, my science degree is in another direction, but, so, but still, it's like, well, I mean, we're putting it still on a somewhat more visible side. And so I just goes through my head like, what do you get out of that on that particular north side? I wouldn't think of doing the north side of my house. I'd be wondering whether I could do the south side of the garage, probably, away from the street. So, but I guess the trees are interfering with that. But, in terms of my head thinking of things, I'm thinking south, not north.
It might be interesting.
Solar, at least Tesla, they guarantee a certain.
Jeremiah,
can you
speak from the podium and
Oh, sorry.
And hit the button so the red light comes on. Oh, there's no light. Okay, never mind. Just say your name.
Jeremiah Trapp for the record. So the way that Tesla does it, after they come out and do their survey, they guarantee a certain amount. So I guess even if it's bad science, they're going to pay half your electric bill. So I just thought I would share.
Well, obviously, it's more efficient to aim it at the perfect angle towards the sun, towards the south. I mean, that's a given, and you can't quite get there. So you struggle with some measure of inefficiency. So it's just a matter of whether it makes sense. I agree, and I agree putting it way up high it does solve a lot of visual problems. So maybe we could just be happy with that.
Yeah, I think you're right with the trees, though, that was limited in where they could collect the sun. So.
And just for the record, this house is not a historic, contributing to the historic district, and the house across from it also has a new building facing onto it. So this isn't the most pristine of streetscapes that they're putting the solar panels on.
Yeah, and I think that,
I just want to make a motion.
I just wanted to say, based on the other ones that we've reviewed, there's a lot more panels on this.
That's probably why.
Yeah,
That's why.
yeah. But I don't have a problem with it.
is there any public comment on this item? Any other commission member questions, comments? Go ahead, Don.
I move to approve HRC-18-089, a request to install roof-mounted solar panels on a house on property zone single-family 6,000, located at 319 Mountain Street, APN 003-192-24, based on the findings outlined in the staff report, the standards and guidelines for rehabilitation, the Carson City Historic District guidelines, and consistent with Historic Resource Commission policies.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The landscaping looks great, Jeremiah. Good job. How's your back?
That's another element.
Next item is E3.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be not voting on this item.
For possible action, HRC-18-102, to consider a request for partial demolition, an addition, a re-roof, modification to chimneys, a new porch, new windows, and a new fence on property-owned residential office, 406 North Nevada Street, APN 003-226-03. Hope.
Mr. Chairman, before we continue with this item, I'd like to ask the Vice Chair to get back on the record and just explain his abstention. He could just say he's abstaining and not voting on this matter because he's representing the applicant. Thanks.
Go up there and stand here. Yes, I'm going to be abstaining on the vote on this item. Oh, because I'll be representing the client as a paid consultant.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Ope.
Thank you. You do have some late material, so I just want to bring that to your attention. You received at your seat a list of excerpts from various newspaper articles over time related to this building. That's the first page after the yellow sheet. After that, you have received a copy of the report that was in the report done by the National Park Service on historic buildings on this particular building. So I'm sorry that wasn't in the original staff packet, and thank you to Commissioner Schmitter for providing that. And you also have a photograph of the building with the children in front. I believe that was in the packet, but this is a clearer one. And thank you to Commissioner Block for bringing that for distribution to the commission. The subject property was constructed in 1871 by Abe Curry, one of the city's founders. Per the 1980 city's resource inventory, the home was built with stone quarried from the Nevada State Prison. It's an L-shaped building with its extension at the rear and a projecting front entry. The hip roof is pierced by 4 chimneys. Details include the double-hung windows with 4/4 lights, stone lintels and sills, brackets at the eaves, and a recessed entrance. The applicant is proposing the following: demolishing and rebuilding the west wing apartment while retaining the stone facade on the south and west sides as well as the fenestration. A re-roof of the entire house with a 50-year laminated composite roofing. Removal of chimneys. Rebuilding the front covered porch consistent with historic photos, replacing all window sashes with Pella aluminum clad wood windows and storing the existing windows, and extending a 4-foot wrought iron fence along Nevada Street, adding an entry gate and a vehicular gate. I'm going to take these items one by one because I think it's just going to be easier. The applicant is proposing an addition on the west side of the building. So what you'll see in this site picture is the west side of the building. If you look at the west wing, the portion where the addition is really an interior elevation where you have that, I don't want to call it a carriage house, I'm not sure, it's an outbuilding. I'm not really sure what to call it. It's not a garage, it's, Bob and Andy were nice enough to show it to me. And so you have that building, and it looks out onto the yard. So where the addition will not be a primary facade. 5.26.1 of our guidelines speak to the addition to how to handle additions to historic buildings. What the guidelines say is that the additions need to be compatible in their configuration, design, style, scale, materials, and architectural details with the distinctive character defining features of the building. The additions should be done in a manner in which they do not destroy significant original historical or architectural material. The additions which seek to create an earlier appearance shall not be approved, and that additions which are incongruous with the building shall not be approved. So again, the applicant's proposing to remove the west wing of the home while retaining the south and west stone facades. The existing fenestration will also be, along the south, will also be retained. The footprint of the building will be expanded to the north. The north elevation of the west wing, and I have the elevation on the screen for you, will utilize a stucco exterior and incorporate new windows and doors. Therefore, it won't be confused with the original construction. Staff finds the addition to be consistent with the guidelines in that the character-defining features, which include the stone facade on the south and west elevations and the existing fenestration on those elevations, will be retained. Additionally, with the use of a different exterior material on the north elevation, it will not be confused with the original building. In terms of the roof, Section 5.14.1 speaks to how to handle roofs for historic buildings. What the guidelines tell us is that original roofing material and features are to be retained and repaired if at all possible. Other roof features such as chimneys are to be retained. I've posted for you the elevations, and what the staff finds is that the shape of the roof is a character-defining feature, and I believe the shape is being retained. Due to disrepair of the chimneys, the applicant is proposing removal. The staff is recommending to create consistency with the guidelines that the chimneys be retained. Staff does recognize this may mean removal and rebuilding of the chimneys, and I'm okay, that's a construction method. But I think at the end of the day, when the re-roof's complete, the chimneys should still be as they have been historically. In terms of porches, Section 5.19.1 provides guidelines on porches for historic buildings. What it tells us that if suitable documentary evidence can be presented which demonstrates the original existence of a porch, which no longer exists, the porch may be reconstructed to match the original as best as possible. We do have evidence that the porch was there. There's photographic evidence and written descriptions of the fencing, the porch. The plans don't call out the building materials, so staff is recommending a condition of approval that the posts be wooden material. In the late material distributed from the Historic American Building Survey, it indicates that it documents that the porch was a 5-bay porch. The porch that's being contemplated, sorry, I went the wrong way, is a 7-bay porch. So staff would suggest to remain consistent with the guidelines that there be a condition added, and again, I hadn't read the Historic American Building Survey till today, but I am recommending a condition that the porch construction match the original 5-bay porch construction that's identified in the Historic American Building Survey. In terms of windows, Section 5.16.1 speaks to guidelines for windows. The guidelines advise that the original windows shall be retained and repaired when at all possible. When replacement is necessary, a window of duplicate design shall be used. The size, pane, configuration, design, and trim shall replicate that of the original, and the original trim and surrounds are to be retained when windows are replaced. This commission spends a lot of time on windows, so I know you already know these guidelines. In considering the guidelines vis-a-vis this application, I will note the applicant is proposing to retain the windows by storing them, not by continuing to utilize them. The applicant is proposing replacement windows which will duplicate the design, including the size and the pane configuration. The applicant is proposing wood frame windows. So although utilizing the existing windows and repairing those windows as necessary is preferred per the guidelines, the staff's position in this, in large part, is based on sitting with the HRC for 2 years and listening to how windows are treated when there's a request for replacement windows. I do find the applicant is meeting the guidelines. But I do recognize that the guidelines clearly states that original windows shall be retained and repaired when at all possible. In terms of the fencing, you can actually see the fencing in this picture that's there, but Section 5.2.4 provides guidelines for new fences. It says the design of the fence will be determined based on its function and location. No fence shall be constructed which adversely affects the primary view of any building. There is currently, if you've been to the site, a wrought iron fence enclosing a portion of the yard. The applicant's proposing to install a 4-foot-tall wrought iron fence along Nevada Street. The fence will delineate the private property. The open fencing will not obscure the view of the building. The wrought iron fencing is consistent with other fencing found in the district, and the staff finds the fencing to be consistent with the guidelines. So with the conditions mentioned and the added condition that the porch reconstruction match the original 5-bay porch described in the HAPS report, the staff does find this application meets the guidelines and is recommending approval. And I'm happy to answer questions, and Andy Font, the property owner, and Rob Darney, the architect, and Bob Fredland, the contractor, the realtor, they are all present, and I'm sure ready to describe the project in greater depth.
Thank you, Hope. Commission member questions?
I have a quick. Is this photograph of the building, do you know what year this is?
I think it's about 1880.
1880? Okay, I noticed that the windows on the corner there have been changed then? Do you have a photo of the front of the building?
I believe that's what, like a solarium room that was exterior to the building and accessible from the porch, and that facility, if you will, or that room is no longer in existence. I have the information from Mr. Darney, who
Okay.
can probably speak to it.
So there was windows behind this building that are the double hung?
My name's Rob Darney. I'm the architect. I represent the owner of 406 North Nevada. Yeah, it doesn't show up in early photographs. Later photographs. This probably went away fairly quickly, but it appears to be just from the scars left on the building from the front porch. It appears to be exterior only. They accessed it from the porch. You can't get in. You weren't able to get into it from the house, and I think it was more of a temporary kind of a structure. Because there's no remnants of it, and there's not a duplicate of it on the other side to make it consistent. And we don't propose to replace it.
Right, but you're proposing to do a full-length porch?
Yeah, the only
Or-
reason that we changed that from the 5-bay, well, first of all, because we didn't have access to that particular narrative that said 5-bay, is if you look on page A1 of my drawings, you see the area of concrete that is currently there at the front porch, which is a later concrete addition that was not relative to anything having to do with the house. Because they did this, they actually end up parging a lot of the rock at the foundation to hide it as they match the concrete to it. So we want to take all that out and rebuild the porch in the rectangular form that's more consistent with what we see in the photograph. If you notice in the photograph, however, the roof doesn't go all the way to the end of the building. Go back to that first one. Yeah, it stops. I got a little pointer here. It stops right there, and the building goes to there. So that these end bays, they did not they turned the corner with the roof. So I believe that then it'd be symmetrical. So the roof comes out this way towards us the same distance of this. And that made a perfect 45-degree corner. We can replicate that if that's what you choose to do, but because we're not trying to replace and duplicate exactly what was there historically, we're just trying to emulate it, that we thought that for the sake of the usage in today's environment, that we would extend it and have use of a larger covered porch. But we're entirely open to suggestions on how the board feels about that.
Yeah, it looks like the porch splits those two side windows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which creates a problem for us, because it also dumps water right on that last window. And that's what we were trying to avoid by stretching it out to the ends, is get away from those little nasties that were inherent in the original design. And at some point, something else was done right here, because if you look at the scar that's on the building now, it is not symmetrical. It curves off like it was a warped. Somebody cobbled something years later to get the water from not leaking. And that's what's left on the building, is a black scar on the rock. This side, however, is clean. It shows that line a lot more clearer of where that hits the building. And there's also the metal spike sticking out of the wall that probably held the ledger.
And then what year is this photo taken? Do you know?
I agree with Jed, it's probably 1880s.
It's different than this one.
I've seen some of the aerial photographs. Actually, those two pictures are probably taken pretty close to each other. Yeah. No, they're square. They appear round, but they're square. There's a photograph in one of my doctor's offices, the aerial photograph of 1892, and that whole front porch is gone by then. It's not on there. 1892. The porch was no longer there, including the little solarium. The turret thing at the top, that shows up in pictures. The last one I saw was probably in the 1910s, 19-teens. But then there's no other photographic evidence of when it got torn off. We're guessing somewhere in the 30s that came down. And they did a terrible job. We're going to have to go and rebuild the roof in the middle. If you stand back far enough, you'll be able to see evidence of the collapse of that area. It's kind of a cobbled together structural nightmare. that we'll be solving. And we're intending in a later phase, not this particular phase, but that's going to get rebuilt and replaced at some point. That's part of our future planning.
Are the porch posts then going to be the rectangular form like these?
Score posts, and by the way, I do call out wrapped wood posts. They'll just be a wrapped post to mimic that. I'm not going to try to duplicate whatever that is because I don't have a clear enough picture. I'm going to emulate it. And it'll probably be simpler, not quite as detailed. We are going to replace these little corbels that are up along here because those are quite a feature of the entire facade that I think is worthy of being imitated. Other than that, it's just going to be a simple post. I think in the packet there's a couple of examples of more modern homes with covered porch. We'll have beadboard up underneath.
I feel fairly strongly that it should be a 5-bay again, since everything from the National Register nomination to the HABs report to all the surveys mention a 5-bay, and we're basing it on the photographs, and we can clearly see 5 bays. But I'm also cognizant of the challenge with the water and taking it off the roof. So I wonder if there's some other type of solution.
We started with this design right here, mostly because we didn't have this photograph at the time. We only have the other one, and the tree kind of blocks where that last post is.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
So we thought it did go end to end, but when we saw this one, we'd already designed it. But obviously, we can change it because the bays are not important. Just take that last bay that I have off. What we're concerned with is that spot right there on both sides, because it's right at the window. This is not coming back to the house between the windows. It's definitely, it's 6 foot out, which puts it right on the edge of one of them, enough to get water on concerns at the corner.
Bob Fredlin, general contractor for Andy Fan. And I'm just wondering if you could consider the 5 bays, if we went to the 5 bays but took it all the way out to the end, so that we'd maintain 5 bays, but it would just extend those ends so that we could capture the water. Do you see what I'm trying to do?
Here's the problem with that, Bob.
Well, I know there's a problem.
I can't get them symmetrical.
I know, we can't get them totally symmetrical.
Right.
So the best symmetrical look at it, and looking at the building today, would be putting them up with the 7 bays, but they don't sound like they like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying, Bob.
You see what I'm saying?
It's not going to work for me.
Okay.
Bob or Rob, is there a way we can hide a gutter on the north and south
It'll have a
ends
gutter,
of that
yeah.
roof to at least,
It'll have a gutter, but that's still, every time you bring a 90-degree angle like that on a roof, and the problem is the rock. It's so uneven that it's primed for leaking, no matter what you do there.
What about, so the conservatory, solarium, greenhouse, whatever that was, has its own roof?
It did.
So what if can we do something with
Can we jog back and
mimicking that
maybe
roof
just the
line?
roof there and do that on the other side though?
Right.
But then that creates the 7 bays almost.
Yeah, that's almost as much of a...
No, because you would just do it at the top. You wouldn't have the posts.
Now, what we can't, I know what you're talking about. I think what she's talking about, Bob.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to hold it up.
Here, let me show you. And I'll
That would
explain
look,
here.
consistent.
I think what they're talking, Bob, is to go like, have this thing go like that.
Right, exactly, but
Leave
how,
this porch.
yeah,
That way you got.
so,
this.
then are we getting, this is a bay?
This is, yeah, so we'll have to have a column there, and there. Okay. So this will be
Yeah, it's
5
still-
across here. and
It's still gonna show up.
Well, here's the thing we could do is,
4, 5,
if you show that,
6, and it
can you
almost
show
show up
the
to 7 bays,
site plan?
because I gotta support the ends. I'm sorry.
Or a floor plan. Floor plan.
I think there's a way that you guys can figure that out if we leave the 5 bays. You can cut a flashing into that stone, and you can come off of that roof and you can get it done. Because I'm also in favor of the 5 bays. It's a problem you guys have to solve.
I understand, and
Okay, right there, stop. Don, what if we just set these 2 last bays back so that they,
like
see,
she's
there's a jog
requesting.
in the building right there. right there and right there. This front piece here sticks out from the main mass of the building. So this roof, you see how it goes up higher, has to go back further. What if we jog it right there, 5 bays in the front, and then 2 more, that 6 foot back? That'll still leave us 6 foot covered.
Which would have kind of been what they had it with the solarium.
Yeah.
And, on the other side, we can't
This is a 6 foot
tell.
overhang right now, and then this is 12 foot because of that jog in the building.
That far.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we could step it, zigzag it in the corners.
And you'd have to have the post.
Then you'd have to have another post.
So I wonder if we can make those on the end a little wider or just differentiate them somehow?
Well, we could make them solid walls like we would have seen in the solarium.
No, in that case,
You know,
I'd
or
probably
something
just
like
go back
that.
to doing that.
You could, that way it would almost replicate that. I mean, that way, the 5 bays that Dawn's asking for, I fully understand, Dawn.
No, it can be
But
done,
the-
it's just
but
not
this-
ideal.
Hi, guys. Andy Van, homeowner 406 Nevada. I'm cool with having 2 solariums on the sides, just to have as you come into the front porch, that side open, and I can have nice greenhouses on either side of the house, growing orchids and such, not, enclosed. You still have your 5 bays preserved, it still has the symmetry, and we just have 2 enclosed on 3 side rooms on the 2 sides, which is what you got here.
Well, which is what we have here.
And then the other thing, and then instead of being if you see how that's a flat roof there, if you put the pitch back in, which is here.
I guess, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, Michelle, in reference to increasing not just a post, but actually making an 18 or 2 foot wall that comes out and goes like this, like it shows in the solarium. Yeah, and so that was done on the, it'd be the south side. But what was done on the north side, we'd want to match that, wouldn't we? I mean, that would look beautiful.
Actually, we're going to need the mic.
Hey, Rob, get back up here.
Well, you have this picture in your packet, if you could all refer to it. It's not up on the screen. But if you look at that photo, it shows that solarium roof is completely flush with, even though it's set back, it's in the same plane vertically as the porch. It does not tuck under.
Right.
So Jed just gave me a copy of the 1885, 1890, and 1907 Sanborn maps. All 3 versions of the map show the porch step back. And I'm wondering how they accomplished that. I think everybody,
On just the south
well,
side,
no,
right?
it's both sides. It goes to north.
solarium is right there.
Why don't we do that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the solarium is in 1907, it shows the solarium filled in on the south.
But otherwise,
But
it's just step
originally,
back.
it looks like it did step back the entire width.
Well, the drawing, the photo clearly indicates that the porch is not symmetrical to the building. It extended further to the north than
Yeah.
it did to the south, by almost, I'd say 3 times.
On here, it looks symmetrical.
No, that's actually,
Yeah.
Donnie,
Because
that
it
actually is
stepped back.
symmetrical.
No, I don't,
That's the last post right there.
No, I agree, the photo's wrong, and what I'm wondering, Michelle,
But there's that, and there's the little slip.
just a sec, Michelle, the 5-bay description is coming from the 72 report?
The National Register nomination, because this is a standalone, and all the survey say 5 bays.
But
But they're getting it from the
the
photo.
problem is, we have a photo that shows 5 bays with a solarium, and that may be the confusion. We may have had 7 bays with
Well, 5 bays
step
fit
back.
at the street line.
5 at the street light, then step back with 2 more, looking at the Sanborn maps.
So we're kind of open either way. Yeah, extend it 7 bays or jog it back with 7 bays.
I think that jogging it back would be a good way to solve that. I think the.
Now that you show us that Sanborn map, it makes sense because all that would be different, we'd have to add another column in that corner to make that jog And if it shows that that's how they did it originally, then that just kind of supports that.
If I have an 1885 Sanborn map that substantiates that porch was stepped back, and on 1907 showing the solarium in front, I could support the 7 bays in that case.
The only thing I
And-
add is
and-
we
With the step
leave that,
Yeah,
we may not want to build the solarium.
no, we don't need to, but I would step the porch back. We can counter the National Register nomination form with additional data to say, we think there was 7. We think that's a more accurate depiction,
With its step down.
and we're covered that way.
Yeah, because this mass here is quite significantly stuck out towards the street, as its own thing.
Looking at the picture, I think it's the angle of the picture, but you look at the Sanborn map, I think there were 5 bays in there and it's set back. And true to nature, hey, we've got a porch with a cover over it, let's make another room out of there. So, by 1907, they ended the solarium, but in 85 and 1890, it goes straight across the front and it's equal. And I think the 5 bays are there, and you go back and continue the bays off the roof as on the Sanborn map, but it solves all the problems. You got 5 bays, and then you have 6 bay on the north, and you have 7th bay on the south.
That would simplify.
That are stepped back.
Because all 3 of these.
And that cures your water problem.
And the roof
Okay.
is almost
no
per
issues
the
with that.
original.
Are you still talking about these larger walls on those ends of the 7th ways, or as long as we post and we just jog it back?
I would keep
That would look sharp.
I would keep the 5 bay configuration as it's in the photo, and then step back, put your posts on the corner for the other side bays, and
I agree.
I think you've got what was there originally.
Okay.
And Rob, I'll just email you those cutouts that
I appreciate that.
that's,
Thank you.
that was fun.
Actually, if you could send that to Hope for the record too, that'll
You
help,
bet.
because we'll put that in the.
What year Sanborn map are we going back to?
There's 3 here.
Okay, they're all the same. Can you just give me 1 year then?
1885.
Thank you.
That's the one I believe I sent.
So Rob and Bob, you think you can handle the water now with
Yeah,
this
yeah,
situation?
that simplifies the roof in real well.
Okay, good, great.
I've got a question
Now the next issue.
regarding the windows.
Yeah.
The replacement windows, what kind of a shadow line do we have with the Muntins? Is it replicating what we have?
Yeah, we're actually not replacing the whole window, we're just replacing the sashes. Just top and bottom sash are going to be replaced with modern, insulated glass sashes. The windows that are in there now, most, I'd say 70% of this glass has been replaced with thin 1/8-inch sheet glass. And they're in there, and they rattle when you shut the window, and they whistle, and they're pretty nasty, and there's a lot of them. And it seems to be, for her being her primary residence, that we're just going to replace these 2 sashes, leave all the mechanisms in place, and store those sashes. So they could be restored and hung anytime down the road.
But if this is a building of historic significance for our community, why can't they be restored for this building, not some
There
other
are
theoretical building?
16. And again, it's all about, money's not growing on trees right here.
Well, you can peck away at the project, I suppose. I kept most of my single-pane, leaky
They're in
old
good
shape,
shape, realistically, but non-operable, and every single pane of glass has been replaced. There's no more. I think there's 4 or 5 with the wavy, but other than that, they're the thin, cheap stuff. And it's just made more sense to make them not whistle and make them airtight and make them modern.
Well, I'm all for making things not whistle, and I have more old glass in my house than this has apparently. So that was all the more reason to try to save that wavy, interesting glass. But still, you can cinch things up lots of ways. I mean, talk to Jed down here, who spends a lot of time on said projects.
Yeah.
With his windows, it's
Right now,
possible.
It's all about time and money right now, and that's the honest truth. Because yes, you could individually take these out, but when she's at her primary residence, that's not a necessarily realistic project for her.
I'm sorry, but the efficiency
Time-
of a window is
time.
huge.
Yeah.
But, sure, you could rebuild them all what we're using is the top-of-the-line pellet product that's been used nationally in historic projects in national parks in Nevada and nationally, San Francisco, all over. And we're using the putty type of window. It looks like the putty window. It's the blunt stock window. It's everything as close as they have been able to use. I haven't seen any other window that can replicate the historical looking frame and everything else. It adds the double pane window to it. It adds the proper screen. These were hung with screens with little latches up above and a full screen all the way down, in the day. I'm not sure if yours were. So this just really takes the efficiency and the proper use of that house. She's redone all the electrical, all of the heat. We've redone all the plumbing. So she's really taking this house up to where it needs to be to last another couple hundred years.
I have just a couple quick comments. I'm very familiar with the Pella restoration replica window. That's great, and I can support that in this type of a thing. The only argument I have with the comments that you made is we don't have the money. We're not here to discuss money. We're here to talk about the historical importance, and if the money doesn't work, I'm sorry. But I do support the Pella reproduction window. It's used nationally. If you do use the reproduction window, Pella's gone to a great extent to mimic and maintain a good quality product that, from the street, or even when you get close to it, it's there. But I just don't want to have an excuse of this is all we can afford. Then don't do that part.
Don, that was not my intent. The intent was that when it came to us to sit down and decide what to do, that was one item on our list, obviously, is from this side of the aisle.
It's just a tough precedent for us.
Yeah, it comes down to a tough question of, do you want them operable and useful and looking good, or do you want to spend the next 4 years doing them one at a time? And what we decided was if we can keep them for someone else who has more will to do so, then we could certainly do so. But at this point, it makes more sense for us to replace it with modern, working, high efficiency.
So with that, Rob or Bob, how much modification to the frame is going to be done?
Almost none. I think
the
stop is the only thing that has to be replaced.
So just the stops, what I'm thinking
The
is,
exterior, you'll barely notice the difference because there's a
storm
round
sash
out there
on it,
that's
yeah.
out there. That's stain.
where I'm going is, if I come back, if I want to buy this from Andy 5 years from now, want to put the windows back in, am I going to have a headache with the frames because they've been cut out?
No, all we do is we take out one stop, and these windows are actually going in from the inside, and they slip right in, okay? And then we just put a new piece of trim on the inside. Hopefully it's that easy.
Yeah, they're exact replicas of the size and fit of the detail.
So I have a question. The two windows next to the front door which will be under the porch, is there original glass in that?
Yes, and we're not going to touch the front door.
No, so the windows that are,
Had a tree in front of it for a long time.
the windows to the
original glass, no.
north.
That's all going to stay.
It's not the original
That
design
will.
and everything else.
But,
Side lights
Probably is.
have been replaced.
Correct. Yep. So-
but the windows, how much original glass? I mean, is there enough original glass that you could redo
In this part here?
one window next to the door
Well,
with the
we'll
original?
have to find out what the original was, what they used in that, and I'm sure she'll look at that, definitely. Right now, she's just leaving the front door with the two side panes and the upper glass right there.
I'm talking about the windows.
You're talking about these two.
Yeah. Is there a way,
It makes sense to do two and not all.
well, if you have two on the front porch, which is the main facade, people are going to be standing there, it's going to be protected, it's not going to be exposed to the weather, and you could use original wavy glass. I think that's a nice touch, and then replace all the other ones that are on the sides and lesser viewed elevations that are probably closer to the rooms that you're going to be using.
Yeah, I mean, we
I
could do
just-
something like that.
don't
Just
think it
from
would
the
look-
outside, I don't know.
So
You put them side by side, you can tell the difference.
Yeah, so my question was, is there enough wavy glass to redo one window?
Oh, no.
If we started ripping apart the other windows?
Oh, maybe
Maybe,
for two,
but-
maybe
I
But it's
mean,
not
it
two,
wouldn't
it's
look
six.
very appealing.
It's not two, it's six.
6.
It's two on that side of the door.
Well, no, she's just talking about this facade here, not the whole, not the side.
She's just talking about just for
these
show,
two.
for museum piece. is what
But you're
she's
going to
looking at.
see all six from the street.
Right.
But they're not close to each other. I guess the point.
Well, it's 2, 2,
And
and
that,
2.
you know, another reason also to keep in mind as you look at the addition is to keep all of these windows consistent also. As we go to the addition, we're using the pellet product, the same product, to which now I think it's got aluminum, if I remember right.
Clad.
You know, one wood, one aluminum, or something like that.
Well, that's the thing too, is
So
if
we
it
can
was,
get
if
everything
you could tell the
consistent
difference, I
with the
think I'd tend to
efficiency.
agree with you. But standing at the street looking at that house with one new one next to one old one, if they're both painted and refinished, I don't know if you could tell the difference. Because the only thing we're replacing is that sash and not the entire frame. The entire frame will stay. Just that sash that slides up and down will be replaced.
The fact that we're archiving all the windows, I think, carries, I mean, you've dealt with SHPO. I think that's a standard mitigation measure is, you know, if we're going to change stuff out, let's keep originals. And it does give an opportunity to make a complete product out of what's left at some point, so.
I have a question. I drove by there today and I noticed there's a number of windows that were open. Have those been repaired? Do they function?
It's just for air.
We were trying to get anything open we could.
Right,
No
but
air
they function,
conditioning.
are they propped open or the weight sash cord still working on them?
Propped, and they're still sticking, you know, we're just getting up to get any circulation because we don't have the AC completed.
Right, and so when those old windows leak and they rattle, is there there's not insulated with spring metal or anything in them? When we went to the camp program that we had that the Historic Commission put on, they talked to us about taking the sashes out and putting the spring metal in, and I actually bought some at Menards. And yeah, I understand. I mean, I've restrung 19 windows in my house. And the truth is when you have central air and things like that, you might have 2 to 3 windows open. That's 1875, 1867, my office, they're all screwed shut, and they're all caulk shut, and when we want fresh air, we open the doors. And when Nevada Energy Convergence came in, we were in 10% about having to vent them. But, you know, you guys want to take out the windows and save them somewhere, you might as well throw a rock at them or put them in a vintage store, because there isn't another building in this town that has 7-foot tall windows. Mine comes close at 6'6".
Well, we wouldn't be saving them for someone else, we'd be saving them for putting back in this particular.
Well, yeah, and time goes on and a new owner comes and kids play and things get broken. I mean, the reality of that is probably none. You might as well put them in the attic or the basement and forget about them. But I'm with Don, we're talking about the landmark house that has to do everything with Carson City. Now, we talk on this commission about the front facade. There's 6 windows in there. If you fix those 6 windows, which 4 of them were open this morning, or more, there was a few of them, that front facade we're always looking at, what if we have them restore those front windows and the pellets would look great on the rest of it? And whenever I've come in front of the commission and talk about, well, let's make it all the same as when it was built or what's been replaced, and you want to see the different periods of when things are adapted. I know firsthand the windows are repairable. They're not in bad shape, but we always look at the facade, the front of the building. I could care less about the other 13 or the other 7 that are everywhere else. But when you also look at those double pane windows, you also do see a glare. If it's low E, which hopefully you wouldn't put low E in there, you see the green tint. You can get the stuff with the, I guess, nitrogen or something that's a natural light, which helps. But I had dreams of windows this nice when I started undertaking my project that I might add Mr. Fedlin sold me. But it's, you know, all the weights are in there. I've used 300 feet of sash cord, and it's doable. The way the old windows were configured, the way the top sash and the bottom sash, there's a ceiling strip in there. The windows wobble back and forth so you can put the spring metal in there. The inspection covers are there. The whole anatomy's there to do that.
Jed, did you also notice all the storm windows on front?
Well, and
That's just going to create, leaving these storm windows on too if we leave those.
well, if you put the storm windows on in the winter, like you're supposed to, nobody really cares how cold it is outside because they don't want to be outside, and you take them off in the summer. And I deal with this all the time. I mean, my house is fully insulated and everything else, which I know there's a problem with sandstone not having the same R value, but you've also got central air in there. You know, and if we have them replace all the windows except for the 6 in the front, I mean, I think it's really, it's not just because it's an old house, it's Abram Curry's old house. And I applaud what Andy's doing, putting the front porch back on, and eventually, not in this discussion, the cupola is, I'm so grateful that someone would want to come and do this, but it seems like the labor versus the windows on those 6 on the front would be worth it. It would be worth it to me. I looked at the house, Bob showed me the house, I would have loved to have been able to afford it. Because it's really in good shape. And those storm windows that were put on, because you look at the HABs report and it says how dilapidated the windows are in 1972, but somebody bought them and rehabbed them and put the storm windows on, which preserved it. I mean, the storm windows, yeah, they're ugly.
Take away the whole effect that you're trying to accomplish anyhow.
Well, it takes away one effect, but it also, when you're putting double pane windows in, it changes the effect.
And those windows are going to be protected by the porch that you're building, so they won't be exposed to as much weather. They probably won't have to have storm windows.
Guys, you're asking a lot of me. You're really asking a lot. I feel like I'm bending over backwards, and I don't want to have plywood in the windows for 3 years when it takes, that's not my skill, that's not my passion. I want to spend my time, and I want to spend my effort, and I want to spend my love entertaining in the house, and I can't put my window coverings up until the windows are solved. So, I mean, you're making the situation really untenable for me. And one hand, you say you're grateful and you want me to do this. On the other hand, the windows are 50% exterior. Guys, the windows are 50% interior. And my position is you're making it really untenable for me to live in this house, saying, oh, just put air conditioning in. And pay the electric bill for that, and you can do this. It's like, I feel that I'm bending over backwards with landscaping, I'm bending over backwards, with the roof and the construction, I'm bending over backward having, an expert here. I've invited you guys to come out, a couple of you came out and actually understood, my passion for building the house into a home again. It's been an office for 40-some years, and it has taken a beating. So I'm trying to get into the house. I'm living in 300 square feet right now. With my animals. I've been doing this for 5 months. I just came out of 6 weeks of pneumonia. I'm desperate to move into my home, to have my family come and visit, to start entertaining, to open up the house to people like you and other, benefit organizations, and I can't.
Would you be
do it.
opposed to rehabbing these 2 windows?
I don't want to rehab any of them. I want to put
No,
them
but
all.
I'm saying, in negotiating, trying to get this done,
no.
otherwise we won't be doing any of them.
Guys, please, understand the windows are 50% you and 50% me. I've done all the research. The money is going to be the same whether it's Pella or a reconstruction. It's the time factor. If you give me the permission, as Hope has recommended, to store and carefully take care of the historical windows, and yet if you want them, I'll give them to you for a birthday present.
No, I don't want them for a birthday present, but
You guys are making me crazy.
Well,
Why can't you just,
where I'm coming from is
can't
I'm
you
not a
just-
contractor, I'm not a carpenter, I can rehang my windows and fix them and make them work within an hour.
But that's you,
This-
that's not me.
Well, you're right, that's not you, and you have a contractor and you have an architect, and
Who are
I'd like to
building a
see,
porch
I'd like
and
to see
landscaping
a
and
restoration project and not a renovation project. And like I'm saying, yes, I'm grateful, but it's also Abraham Curry's house. We've lost so much, we have this is the perfect opportunity, and I'm just saying, 6 windows in the front. It's doable, and they're not destroyed.
Restore it so it'll last, without a doubt. That's the best product we can put in.
Well, and
Used nationally.
how many years has it been since 1871? The
Bob?
windows are still there.
The fabric of this house is part of its history. I mean, I'm all in favor of restoring, or taking the windows out, replacing them, and storing them. But you can't make the argument that those historic windows are not part of that house. It is something that can be, if you were doing a faithful restoration, you would fix the windows. I mean, I've seen windows in much worse condition where people have gone in and gone to a mill and had muttons remade and replaced it. And yeah, it takes a lot of time if you've got big problems. I don't know that this does. I'll let the commission decide where they want to go with the replacements. But please don't make the argument that we're saving this house by putting new windows in.
You're making it livable by putting new windows in.
I think you could leave 2 old windows on the front porch, and
To the right of the front door?
to the right of the front door, and it wouldn't cost you anything because you don't have to do anything to them. That's all we're asking for you, is to have some original material left.
Just 2, not 6.
So one room.
I would go for 2. That would make me happy. It's on the same facade as the front door. The other ones are stepped back, so they're not on the same plane. I would love it if you could restore those too, but if you take them out and if the windows are saved, then they could be restored and put back in at a later date. But at least you'd have the 2 original ones by the original door, and we'd have the facade saved. And then you're putting on this beautiful front porch that you're doing an accurate representation of that.
Start windows back on.
You won't have to, it's got a porch on it.
Oh, no, it needs the insulation.
Still temperature.
If you talk to the Pella representative, and he'll tell you the same thing. There's no difference between the double panes and a good old glass window with the proper window treatment on the inside. You lose very little with a nice curtain there that keeps the draft out.
So all the curtains are going to be the same, they're already selected, they're inbred, they're Hunter Douglas, and I'm desperate to hang them, and I can't hang them until we get the window fixed off.
You're not losing much through the window pane itself. It's usually you're leaking through around the frame. And so you can put, like Jed was saying, the stops around it. You can fix those 2 windows on this historic house that you're restoring and doing a fabulous job on. And you're going to have people walk up and go, oh, are these the original windows? Tink, tink, tink. No, they're not. They're in the basement.
Two's not.
Nobody's going to be able to...
You know, we talk about the double pane, whether they can be put on the inside too, folks. You don't have to see them at all.
I'm sorry, I can fix it.
You can put we were talking about the aluminum windows that are put on the outside. They can be put on the inside too. I've done this in the past. You don't have to see those at all. I think it's we're not here to negotiate with you, but that's a great compromise. I think on the same plane, I've rebuilt these windows. Sorry, Jed, you can't do them in an hour. You might be able to get them in a couple of days. But that is going to be an expense that is justified to maintain what we're all talking about up here. And we're saying with the rest of them, go to the Pella Restoration. But let's maintain the integrity of this building on the front porch and on that single plane.
I have a question, because I did spend several hours on the property. I am not sure that those 2 windows are the ones, there's not a lot of glass in there, original glass, right?
No.
So then we're going to be
How do you tell?
picking and pulling.
Well, I was hoping it would be wavy glass that would be, but if you can't.
We have not counted.
Yeah.
Well, my question is, how do you tell? Because my windows are thicker at the bottom and they're really thin at the top because glass is liquid. But how do you tell that they're not original windows? The 1867 property that Bob sold me, 90% of the windows are still intact. It's not like kids threw rocks through them. On my house over on Spear Street, it's all wavy original glass except for 3 panels. And there are some that do have cracks in them, but most of them are not. How do you tell?
You know, we don't care. We want 2 windows out of 17 put on the front. Do it any way you can. Take the glass from the other ones. You'll figure it out. This is what I'm kind of getting the feeling. This is what we want. Let's just move on. And we spend a lot of time on windows.
And Jed, also, that just because it's wavy glass doesn't mean it's original. It means it's period.
I'd like to talk about chimneys.
So, wait, Michelle, can I ask you then, since you've spent some time there? So is it a silly request then to have those 2 windows saved, or 2 original sashes put into the front? Is there a possibility that you could find 2 on that house that would fit by the front door that would represent an original type of window, or is that just gone? Have we lost it completely?
My thought is I'm okay with taking them and storing them, because the most important part of this window to me is where it frames on the outside, and that's not going to be touched, correct? It's, I mean, pieces and parts on a masonry building, I don't know how easy that's going to be to find an upper and a lower sash. I don't know.
They're in pretty rough shape.
Y'all know I want the windows saved, all of them.
Right.
And like Don said, we're not negotiating, we're spending a ton of time. I'd like to see the 6 windows in the front, but if we can save 2, just 2. I mean, that gives the texture and the feel and the look of what was there, so you can say, oh, those aren't original, but look at these 2. And I would be willing to compromise for that.
From the street, you do see the beautiful.
You mean
restored-
new? It's a good idea.
Here
Did you want to build that?
and here.
We don't have to.
That's what I
Here's what Andy's idea is that might be helpful, is what if we, so we're looking at trying, first of all, we have the problem, can we find 2 windows that actually work and everything's perfect, that we think we've restored them properly, right? And that would be one of your, subject 2, because if we couldn't, then obviously we'd have that problem.
Solarium
We'd
here.
have to go look at them with him. We can all come over and look at the
Well,
window.
however big.
But she's saying, well, wait a
And
minute.
here.
What if we did these returns where the roof, and we talked about the porch being set back,
Yeah, 4 inches.
and if you looked how the solarium was, what if we found one on each side of that solarium to show an example of what those windows would be?
Pellet for the main house. This is a new build. We put the restored windows out here and here.
I think that's adding, no, I think what we'd be doing there is putting elements that don't belong on the house. So let's, I think Michelle's point is more than valid. And I've got a collection of windows, and if I could make 2 out of 8 parts, I'm in pretty good shape. So it is a challenge. And, I think if we have them documented, if we could somehow make them an ongoing part of that house so that, they always stay there. And, the workshop we had, the woman who did the restoration work back in Michigan was overjoyed when she went into a place and found the old windows. So if somebody has the ambition and wants to replace them, they can. We've got to compromise someplace. I'd love to see, millions put into a faithful restoration, but there's a reality.
So I was thinking that they were the original windows and sash and had the wavy glass and could be saved, but if they're not going to be able to project that image, they're not going to be the original windows, they're going to be a hodgepodge there, then it's not going to be the entrance that I would like to have on that porch. And so, I would love to have 2 windows put there that had the wavy glass and would look more original to the house there. That would be the best. But if that's totally impossible because they're all scattered around and you can't do it, then I guess saving the windows and marking them, labeling them when you take them out, which windows they are, upper and down.
Yes.
So-
She plans on bubble wrapping them and putting them in the attic space.
Okay, yeah.
We photograph them, archive them as, this is where they went, and
Would you like to move on to the chimneys?
Is there a consensus with the windows now? Or we,
I just feel bad.
You guys, I don't know how.
there's lots of issues with, you could take those out, start replacing them, and as soon as you break a pane, now you've got to start looking for another window that has the same old glass, and you're tearing more and more apart. I'd rather see them taken out, wrapped, archived, and it's not authentic. We're not getting the same color. We're not getting the old wavy glass look. But remember, when that glass was first put in, it wasn't. There may have been imperfections, but it certainly wasn't wavy and wrinkled and sagging and things like that either.
It should be by.
I've got some in my office that are.
It can't.
They made glass differently
Yeah.
then, so it's a moot point.
You know,
Yeah, the question is, do we want to go with two? Do we want to,
I just have one question. So, Michelle, we don't have really original windows in there with the original glass? Is that what you noted when you were in there? Because if
It
that's...
looked like there was a lot of glass that was replaced.
Well,
but the
I thought
windows-
we were trying to save the glass, the historic glass in those sashes. If we've got replacement glass, it really does kind of change my mind on that. We're going
we
to keep
could do
we're
an
going to keep the
inventory.
frames. The frames stay. Yeah, I really have to rethink what I've been proven that it's a better way to put the windows in.
And we went full circle on this ourselves. We went all the way to both ends, checked it all out. Unfortunately, priced it all out, figured out the estimate time required, how much of the sashes are salvageable as far as being able to strip them, rebuild them, how much glass is left that will break. Like I said, wavy glass, whether it's original pane or not, from its period, but you end up putting new wavy glass in, which you, again, wouldn't be able to tell the difference if they're side by side. Because all that is float glass. It's not really, wavy glass is the name we gave it, but.
Can I ask a question? Is there any way that we can put the windows on a separate motion? Because two windows. And don't think that I
Jed,
haven't
I
put
think
$600,000 in my house.
I think we're spending an
I get it.
awful lot of time on something that,
Can we make that a separate motion, the windows? Because I would be willing to compromise with two, but I don't want to vote this whole thing down because it's all
well,
the same motion.
the next time we bring it up, we're going to have the same discussion. We'll end up in the same place. So why delay it?
Okay,
You know, I mean,
I'm just asking for a
unless we
separate
go
motion for the windows, Mike.
beat Andy and her contractors over the head and say, you have to do it this way, we could come back in 2 weeks.
I
and
was
discuss
asking
it
was,
again.
can we separate the windows out to have it on its own motion, because I want to vote no on the windows. Whether you guys are going to outvote me, that's fine, but I don't want to vote no on the whole project because I don't disagree with the whole thing. I'm having a hard time with windows. All I'm asking, can we separate that out, Dan, as a separate motion?
Mr. Chair, technically, you all could make a separate motion. The reality is, I think somebody could make a motion and get a majority vote, and then the motion could incorporate windows. So I think you'll continue your discussion, but it will be up to the motion maker whether or not to include the windows or to not include the windows, but it could go either way.
Well, and Mr. Chair, just to chime in on that, it's up to the motion maker, but it's also up to the discretion of the chair as to whether or not you want to accept that motion, as stated on the record. So it's in essence, what I'm saying is it's at your discretion what sort of motion you're willing to accept on the record, and if you would decide you want to split it up into separate actions, you can do that as well, or use it as one package motion.
So to be clear to the commission, if someone wants to make two motions, one clarifying windows in any configuration, I'd be happy to entertain both motions.
Thank you.
And a vote on that. Okay? That makes sense?
Mike, you're assuming there's only going to need two motions.
Okay. Do we move on to chimneys and see if we have three?
Can I ask a question? The glass is clear glass, the replacement?
Yes.
Okay, and it's true divided light?
Yes.
Okay.
I've got one little picky thing. On sheet A1, Rob, you call out Anderson's on the windows.
Oh, that was early version.
So I'm just, if we approve this, we'll note on the plan.
Just for the record, it's pellet windows. Did you want to move on to chimneys?
Let's move on to chimneys.
I'd like to stay up here for the chimneys.
We need something to get the smoke out of the room anyway, so.
If, I'm not sure, well, I could use this picture right here. So, right now, there's a total of 6 chimneys, okay? I think originally it had 4, then there was 5, and now there's 6. And so, what our proposal is, on the chimneys.
First button.
First button? Okay. Hold it, right?
Yeah.
So the chimney up, there's one in the back here right now,
That's the north side.
the north side. There's this one, and there's this one. So if you're looking at the front side of the house from Nevada, those two, we want to restore them. Okay? This particular chimney, we'd like to move over just about 8-9 feet right to here,
Between the windows.
so that we'd still have the 3 chimneys from that view. Okay? So that we don't want to take any of those off, we just want to relocate one over a little bit to accommodate for a gas range or get a little gas fireplace.
Can I add to that?
Mhm.
Several reasons for that. One is we want to relocate, that obviously had a wood stove in it, not a fireplace below. That's all been removed. There's nothing structurally in that corner holding that chimney up other than the wood. They've taken out the brick that was in the corner. So we have to rebuild that chimney no matter what. It's falling apart. It's actually got bricks falling out of it. That's the worst, structurally the worst one. We would like to take that down and build an identical duplicate, like I said, 6 feet to the left between the windows. And that allows her to relocate that stove on the inside to between those 2 windows.
So
The fourth one is
Well,
on
let's
the
go-
back, and that was the utility. That's what the one that fired the boiler and all that, and that one you can't. really
if
see
we all
from
have
anywhere.
his elevation A3 on the plans. I don't know if you can bring that up. No?
That one's good.
Let's see here. Where am I at?
That's the north.
Yeah, that's the north, okay.
So, I mean, that's.
Well, yeah,
That's the one that we want to relocate.
this is the one we're relocating. This is the one we're rebuilding. The one we're rebuilding again.
New.
This is a new location for one. Now, if you can bring up do you have the south elevation?
It's up there on the top. That's the existing.
Let's see.
See, the top is the existing.
Yeah, but I'm looking for right there, right in there. You mean,
That's the existing.
oh, the existing here and here. There's actually one missing right here. There's 2 existing fireplaces right here.
It's
This,
actually behind it.
behind this one?
Right.
Yeah. This particular one with the new roof system, we just want to relocate over a bit to pick up her stove and everything else, so that this one is useless, so that they'll still be able to see that one, and it'd just be relocated.
That one's not original. That was put in when the gal, whoever owned it after it was a teaching studio or something, turned it into a 2-bedroom
That's
apartment.
this one here.
And that's when that was built.
The one that, there's a one in very good condition that's still here, and then there's one right behind it. One right behind it, we're actually going to replace with another one, so that it would be for a wood-burning fireplace for the addition, or the rebuild of this apartment or schoolhouse. So we'd actually end up with all 6 fireplaces. Was it 5?
Now, let me,
What am I missing?
let's see. Do we have the 2 elevations?
I did 3.
No, I mean her.
Yeah.
This one's the one you want right here.
Right, this one's got to stay, this one's new, and this one's going to be
If you guys
moved.
could look at page
It's
A5 in your packet, because I don't think she has those on the screen. That's the west elevation, the back of the house.
Stays.
Yes.
The chimneys that you see on both the far left and far right are the ones we're going to rehab. The little one on the far right is the little one that doesn't match anything that was added sometime in the 20s probably. We're going to replace and rebuild a new one for her new location of her heater and her stove. The 2 in the back that are centered, the one that's between the windows we'll keep and rehab. The other one on the far right we want to remove. Is that right?
For the, pellet.
That's the new one.
That's for the,
That's for your new
So
stove.
we're going, yeah, we're going
Yeah.
down 1.
Right.
that's for the new range, isn't it?
But we're going to
No.
keep this one.
The range has to have,
No, it doesn't, that's right.
Now,
so we're going down 1.
the reason we're going to try to remove the one in the back is there's no structural support under it. And in order to rebuild it, we have to, when we move the one in the front, same thing as it will be put back and it will be a faux chimney. It'll have a pipe inside of it with a box with brick, probably a thin brick to mimic the original brick. Because without the structural weight being able to be supported, we'd have to take something all the way through the room and through the floor to do that.
Just for clarification, no, you don't. I've done with our little friend in our office. When on 2nd Street, I had the same problem, and those chimneys are cut off above the ceiling and supported with LVLs and structural up above, and we didn't have to go all the way to the ground. So you can leave these in place without having a structural foundation with the brick.
I'm perfectly happy to have the two, one which was previously the dining room, rebuilt for the symmetry, and then the one that was over the bedrooms, rebuilt for
Right.
symmetry. No issue. Want to move the one in the front to really be in my music room, and it is a bed and breakfast gas fireplace, very small, would just sit between the two front windows by the door. So move that chimney over, again, rebuild, and then in the back.
I'm confused on the one we're talking about. Can you show us an elevation on that one chimney that you're talking about relocating that's on the front elevation?
It's on
The east. Well, and that would be next one.
It'd be the east elevation, right?
Yeah, there.
And where do you want to move it to?
Right there. It's just going from the corner to between the windows.
No, it's not. No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't show on the plan. So that would be taken down and put back in right there.
Yeah, it was an omission on the elevation. They were just looking to move it over
Yeah.
9 feet and actually start using it. And the other two that you see in the existing elevation would be rebuilt.
And these, it doesn't look
Same
like that
place.
now because they're parts and pieces, but these three all match. And we would be rebuilding that one to match it exactly as far as the brick pattern and everything.
So you would need to add that to the proposed east elevation at the bottom there, technically.
Correct, Greg, yes.
Can I ask you guys a question? Instead of, I like how it looks with the three original ones there. Instead of moving it, if you restored those three, could you put another chimney or a flue pipe or something right between those two windows that's not going to hurt the structural integrity? It could always be removed, just to add one more thing there so you can get a glimpse of, based on any of these pictures where they were, but just adding another flue for that cool little new stove.
The problem is that we have to take this down no matter what. It's falling down now.
Well, right, you have to take it down and rebuild it,
In
but
my mind, it doesn't make sense to rebuild it where it's not being used. Let's just move it over 9 feet. I don't, in just my personal opinion, of course, I don't see the physical architectural significance of that particular fireplace on this elevation, whether it's there or there. They put it there because they had, at that time, the furniture arrangement, they had the stove in the corner. She, however, is going to put the stove there inside the room.
Hope, what were the two chimneys that you were recommending?
Okay, I'm going first to the guidelines. So I start with the guidelines. We're going to do a re-roof, right? And we're going to remove some chimneys. The guidance that we have on 5.14.1, guidelines for historic buildings, say, other roof features such as chimneys, dormers, and/or decorative elements are to be retained. So we stop there. So I look at plans and I see photographs, and I see that we have chimneys that seem to be from when the construction occurred that are proposed for removal. It strikes me this violates the guidelines, and my recommendation, and I think the role of this commission is to implement the guidelines. So I would be relying, if someone were to make the argument to me, oh, that chimney went in 1950, that wasn't one of the original chimneys. But to the extent the original chimneys are proposed for removal, I find that to be inconsistent with the guidelines.
Can I make an addition on that? Hope we're not actually removing it, we're relocating it. Small technicality, but still a word.
So you know which are the original, maybe there were just 4 originally? I mean, at some point here that says 4 and then...
They added a 5th in the back when they created this little schoolhouse kind of thing, when they occupied that back in. And that was a smaller, shorter one that was on it, a one-off.
So,
It's still there.
yeah, so I don't have a problem with you removing the little one in the back,
Right.
and even moving the one in the back, because that's not the primary facade. But gives me a little bit of heartburn to move the one chimney from its original position. Is there any way you could build the flume to go up and meet that old chimney?
Probably not because of the proximity to the outside of the building. There's not
Okay.
not enough physical room to accommodate that for a real wood burner.
Just thought I'd ask.
I mean, we turn it to a gas one and do anything, but then it wouldn't be real, so.
You know, it is gas.
Can then we just do a pipe?
It is gas, so that's just the gas.
I mean, we just need to vent.
We could do a pipe through
Would
the
you take
top.
down the chimney and then?
Would you just take down the chimney and then just put a pipe up?
No, I'd keep these two that we are,
The 2 side ones?
but add the vent that they need for the new gas.
But there's 3. Right here, Michelle. You got
But
two.
what would you do with the old chimney that they need to take down when they do the roof?
Which one is?
That's this one.
That one we just want to move to accommodate the new gas fireplace.
Instead of taking it down and rebuilding it where it doesn't do us any good, we want to rebuild it exactly how it looks right back there. And that makes just as much sense to me as leaving that one, rebuilding it, and adding a pipe that was never there.
No, it's not. And that's why we thought, well, we'll put the chimney there.
I mean, it's like the window. We know it's.
Trying to work with you here.
If we're going to have to put a pipe there, I'd rather the chimney was around it,
That's
so.
exactly what it is.
My thinking.
Couldn't you put
That much?
a flue pipe through there and brick around it, like he's
Yeah.
talking about rebuilding the back, and it wouldn't be as massive, because those 3 chimneys in the front are pretty good size, but, and if, what's that?
Silly to have.
I think it would look silly to have 2 chimneys in the front.
Well, there's gonna be 3. You've got the one all the way to the left, all the way to the right.
No.
In that one in the front, that's kind of off the side of the center of the building, and then you have another smaller one going up there. We know it's a different era. We know it's been added. But to take the old chimney and take it down there and move it there, it emulates like different than what everything that we see.
There was 3 chimneys before, 3 chimneys after.
Yeah.
No, he said.
I understand that.
He's
I understand.
3.5.
But I don't, but once again, we look at the front facade here, and you're looking dead ahead in front of those pine trees are gone. They were still there, probably be a non-issue, but you're looking dead on this. I know, as odd as it seems, I'm not concerned about the chimneys in the back because you're not seeing it from the front facade, like we're saying here. So is there a way that we keep those 3 chimneys in the existing and add, yes, a 4th one that's smaller, that's not as massive, that's doing that?
I think that's worse.
If somebody wants to
Can-
restore it,
can we-
if somebody wants to restore it, they need to move the chimney back.
I think, I would rather they took this chimney, the original chimney down that's off to the side, built something around the new flue pipe that maybe wasn't as massive as the 2 on the end to make sure, to show that it's a different time period, different pipe, but has the same function as this original flume, which was for a stove, interior stove. So
I agree.
it would have the same function, be almost in the same location, maybe have a slightly different style or maybe a smaller element to it.
So-
And then the ones on the end could be the original
So
that you're going to
kind of what
rebuild to there.
We're almost saying is take down that one and put another new one up, smaller in dimension, because the Washoe Zephyr took it off 80 years ago. And then we're putting another one in between the 2 windows. That's a different, smaller in design, so you could tell, well, this one did fall off and this one was added.
We're following the Secretary of Standards in adding an element that does not replicate and cannot be confused with the historic ones. We can document and remove the historic chimney, put something else in there that is compatible but recognizable as a new element.
That's different.
Plus, it'll serve the same function. For the function of the building, it'll be the,
So once we do that, how many chimneys are actually functioning?
Three.
It's still 3, okay.
I'd rather do it this way. But you gotta go up, because there's no way to go through the rock.
When you rebuild chimneys, do you use the old material
As much as
when
we
possible
can,
and
we
then
reuse
find
the
other
Absolutely.
appropriate material?
For this chimney, I would use something different. I would go ahead.
For the one that we're relocating?
Yeah, the one that's being relocated,
Modern brick?
yeah, don't use the old brick.
Okay.
Do it slightly smaller, slightly different style. Just, it's the same reason we do stucco. It differentiates from the old. And, you know, we can photo document everything before it's taken down. And we don't have the plans, or we don't have it shown on plans right now, so Rob can add that.
What if we made it look like that one? It's a smaller square. These, see, they're wide and rectangular. This is a little square.
There you go. So, looking at these on the back, you wanted to talk about those? Nope, we're done. Okay, next.
So we're still at 2 motions, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, the roof?
The roof's an admin.
Do we want, the roof is something we would approve administratively. The comp, yeah, the comp is an approved material. So let's go on to, let's see.
Before we leave this, can I make an addendum mention to that we're going to change something on the elevation? I don't know if it's in purview of what you want to look at, but we're not going to use stucco. We're going to use a horizontal wood siding.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what, Rob, why don't we, we'll try to get through motions and stuff, and then if you want to submit a new set with what we've discussed, I'll sign them. That's it.
Okay.
So I just want to see where we are. We have, okay, we just covered the re-roof. That's not an issue. We've got modifications to chimneys. We've got the porch done. We have the windows done. So what's left is the fence and the demolition and addition. Let's hit the fence quick, if we can.
Just one question on the fence. The one that's there right now, how high is that? I didn't have a tape measure.
It's 4 feet.
But most fences we have around town are a little bit less, 38 to 42 range, something like that.
I think most of them are about 42, but the posts are 48.
Right,
But
with the decorative posts.
If they're matching what the wrought iron that's there, it's not attached to the building or anything, I don't see any harm to it.
So whatever height that is, okay.
We're matching what's there.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
that's 4 feet,
Little
okay.
finials on top and.
yeah, we're consistent with the secretary standards by matching what's there because it's an addition that's significant in its own time. So, are we good?
Yes.
We're good on the fence. Okay,
We good, Don?
we have partial demolition and an addition to discuss.
So she's not going to have horses. Existing, I don't know how many of you have been in the existing structure. It's been an apartment for, at least 30 years or 40 years now. It was a little 2-bedroom apartment. The floor's falling out and everything else. It's got a little kitchenette, bathroom. It's got its own hot water heater and, furnace and that sort of thing. And it just, it sits on dirt and sits on rubble foundation on the interior of the north side of it. The exterior on the south side and the street is exposed, and the west side is the original stone. No intentions of disturbing that at all. That's exactly what we want to keep. Then the stucco that you saw in there probably go to a shiplap instead to keep consistent with the carriage house that's in the back and the little garage that's there. So as we look at those, that we'll try to keep consistent with that. The only addition you're really seeing as you look as far as what's additionally here than what is not, we're moving, there's a little covered area in that north portion that's existing it's about 3.5, 4 feet. And we're just moving that wall out to there to give her a little bit more room in there for all the kitchen's going to be back there, the laundry room, and, another master bath and all of that, so. A1, I don't know if you're on that page.
Sheet TS also shows that overhang and popping in there.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
Rob, so I guess my question is, why are you proposing a hip?
So the reason we're tearing this all out is because of structural failure in the roof, structural failure in the floor, mold. These are all hodgepodge windows, aluminum.
I'm okay with the demo. It's the
Then
roof.
replacing it, we have the wall on the south side that we're keeping, that we're limited to. And limited to rebuild what's there limits us to a straight 8-foot ceiling. It's small, it's short. And that's that right there is at 7 feet that you're looking at. The doors are 6'8". She wants to put it back as a kitchen. That's going to be her main kitchen, laundry, storage area. And she wants to make it a feature of the home. She's a baker, she's a chef, and it's going to be a premium kitchen, but we wanted to have a taller, higher ceiling to give it a little more.
Match the rest of the house.
Have some clear story window, transom windows above these doors, and that'll be the kitchen dining area. And we're going to take this all the way out, but we have the rock wall on two sides that we have to marry to. And we're going to leave this down short in this almost the same roof, because that's over the laundry, the storage, and the pantry area, so we don't need any height. That allows us to then, but bringing this back into the regular building, one of the problems is in this corner becomes a water trap. And replacing that with a shed roof doesn't make any architectural sense to us. So this also helps us solve the water problem in that corner. And we make it secondary to the original roof. We add these same little corbels on here to mimic it, but we tone down the trims so we're not mimicking it, we're not duplicating it.
So I figured it had to have been some type of challenge with getting it, up against the building. But when I was on site, I didn't have the plan, so I was just talking to Chris, and I thought it was a gable. I thought there was sort of like an intersecting gable coming out. But I would just suggest that we wouldn't put the corbels back around it, because I think it should look different than the original.
Oh, I guess it does. It is.
Actually, can you go to the south elevation? Oh, yeah. Can we go to the south elevation?
We're not married to that, to the corbels. I mean, this could just be a simple trim that mimics the trim up here, but, whether we put the corbels on it or not,
Keep the dental off.
Kind of flat on that. That addition was really early on and after this main block was built, so I would just keep that flat board of the addition and not do the brackets.
Yeah, so on A3 or
yeah. Simplified.
Just, yep, it's this here, right. And the one, and the
I
return.
have no issues with that. Yeah, the challenge with this, if you're looking at A3, is on that, is that A5? I got my glasses back. Is on that,
Yeah, A5.
that end of that where the rock turns the corner, we're stuck with that wedge shape. And there's almost nothing, you can't get more stone to change it, so we're playing with that as it is.
Yeah, the north elevation was flat for the so we just carried that around.
And it's nice that it's a lower pitch than the main house, so I think that works with the scale and the massing meets the Secretary of Standards.
And are you still proposing to use as that standing seam?
Yeah, from what we can tell, this porch was originally stainless steel metal, it's going to use the same back here. It's back of house that's can't be seen from the street.
But you wouldn't want it on the,
No, that would be column.
okay.
And only because then if you did that metal, then it starts to be more dominant to this. I figured it was better to make this a subordinate mass and use the same roof.
Okay, any more discussion on demolition and addition? Any more questions, comments? Is there any public comment? Seeing that the public's all awake.
He's on our board.
I'll go ahead and entertain the motion.
Mr. Chair, if I can just identify two things I did hear from the commission for your consideration. In terms of, I had recommended condition 7, which said chimneys are to be retained and then went on about rebuilding. I think you'd be proposing to delete condition 7 and replace it with wording to the effect of the chimneys in the rear may be removed as it is not primary facade, and the middle chimney on the western facade may be removed. The new chimney on the western facade shall not replicate the original chimneys, and the chimneys on the ends are to be retained. Secondly, on the porch, I think what I heard is that the porch can have 7 bays, but the 2 end bays are to be recessed per the 1885 Sanborn map building, or porch footprint.
That's correct, and I think we can just reference, did you get that, Tamara?
I will.
Or tomorrow?
Off the recording.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Don.
I have to go back to those just for 1 second, because these are Pella windows, and Pella comes in 2 different styles in the way the mullions are used. They have one form where the mullions fit between the glass, so you're using large pieces of glass, but in their traditional restoration type, the mullions are actually the putty type, and they're not between the sashes, so we have smaller windows and not large planes. So that's the one that I think that we talked about. I want to make sure that we're on board there.
Is that called out with the spec sheet?
I looked and it didn't really cover that, but kind of like what Whipley did across and down the street a ways when he put those in.
Yeah, there's some modifications we need to the plans, and if we could attach the actual specs for those Pellas with it, I think we'll have, at least for the record, we'll know what we approved. Sure.
Okay. I'd like to make the first motion. I move to approve HRC 18-102, a request for a partial demolition. In addition, a re-roof modifications to the chimney. I need to say that one can be removed on the front and relocated
Actually, you can just
as
say per staff recommendation.
per staff recommendations, a new porch for staff recommendations, and a new fence on property zoned residential office located at 406 North Nevada Street, APN 003-226-03, based on the findings and conditions of approval contained in the staff report, the standards and guidelines for rehabilitation, Carson City Historic District guidelines, and consistent with Historic Resources Commission policies, and subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any questions?
For the benefit of the record, the motion is modifying condition number 7 to include the wording I just quoted before the motion, and to provide the clarification on the porch footprint consistent with the 1885 Sanborn that I stated earlier.
Correct, and it does not include approval of windows. Any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have the issue of windows now. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the replacement of the windows with the new Pella True Divided Light windows on elevations, and that the old windows will be archived and stored for future home or future use. So.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
True divided when you said that.
Yeah.
Were they called pellet restoration? Is that the official name?
I think it is.
True divided line.
And- Yeah, it's a true
The only question, do we want to amend it so that we do have the specifications and that, with the updated drawings?
Yeah, if we can amend it, just say the updated specifications will be included on drawings.
With the updated specifications on the new drawings.
Any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
One opposed, the rest are ayes. Thank you, guys.
This was a very complicated project.
Yeah, and Andy, yeah, Andy, we really appreciate what you're doing for that house, so.
Don, which building was it that you redid with those pillars?
Can I approach? We done?
Okay.
I've actually rebuilt them in the street.
Okay. All right. Thank you again. Okay.
Okay, item F, staff reports, discussion only.
Okay, since your last meeting, we've had 5 administrative approvals, 2 re-roofs. One was a situation in the district where that new convalescent home is being built. What they discovered is a neighboring property was encroaching into that property with a parking area, and so both parties wanted to have HRC approval so there wouldn't be any conflict, and you could show the evolution of the HRC approval. So I think it was about a 5-foot encroachment of a parking area, so that was handled administratively. A window was converted to a door. It was not a primary facade. It was an interior property line. And a temporary stage for the Brewery Arts Center was approved. So those were the 5 administrative approvals. And next week, Commissioner Schmitter, the Community Development Director, Lee Plemmel, and I will be headed to Des Moines, Iowa for the Forum Conference. So we'll come back with lots of information for you.
On windows.
Is there any commission member reports or comments? None? Well, I guess I could bring this up. Parks and Recreation, on Morgan Mill, the Morgan Mill Trail, there's a historic culvert that was determined to be eligible to the National Register. With the floods over the last couple of years, it's beginning to collapse. Parks and Rec is working with FEMA to get funds to rehabilitate it. And along those lines, I've met with them and suggested that as chairman, I might send a letter to National Park Service, to their restoration people, to see if they might be able to come out and help us with some ideas on how to rehabilitate that structure.
That'd be great. Okay.
Yeah, Michelle's seen the structure and has a good idea. So, future agenda items. Could you check on, I'm trying to remember the address, it's Phil Hersey's property on Telegraph? Just find out what the status of
The new shed.
the new shed that's already weathered, and,
The plywood.
yeah, plywood's gonna start delaminating after another winter.
I did receive an inquiry, and I was going to talk to the chair alone, but I'll just ask all of you, whether or not you'd be interested in a presentation on Jack Spar.
Yes.
Absolutely. Any future agenda items? Public comments. Members of the public who wish to address the commission may approach the podium at this time to speak on matters relevant to or within the authority of the Historic Resources Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under the public comment portion of the agenda. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to H, action on adjournment. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.